everyone, and welcome back to the F2 show by Inside F2. Joining me for this one, Omi and Aaron, to reflect on yet another weekend of incredible Formula 2 action, this time at Silverstone, round number 8, British Grand Prix weekend. And Omi, personally, I'm a big fan of Silverstone. I know that it delivers year after year, doesn't it?
Yep, year after year, Formula 2 at Silverstone is always amazing. Any category, really, you drive at Silverstone is always amazing. But this weekend of Formula 2 was absolutely fantastic. Really, really did enjoy it. And yes, Silverstone definitely did deliver some amazing action, also in the wet as well.
Definitely. And Aaron, I know you're a big fan of Silverstone. We talk about it a lot. Best race of the year for you. And yet again, it's delivered another corking weekend, hasn't it?
Hasn't it just? The layout, the new layout of Silverstone just works. It generates great racing because the way the sequencing of the corners plays out, you get the setup for the overtake, but you also have that section from the exit of Lovefield through Copse, Maggots, Beckett's Chapel, up to Stoke Corner. The drivers absolutely love it. It gives, I think, a great balance in terms of aerodynamics, mechanical grip, driver challenge, fan excitement, weather. It's just like, literally, can we race at Silverstone every week? It's that good. And obviously you were there, so you got to enjoy all of it.
I know. Very lucky. A massive thank you to Formula 2 for letting me in the paddock for the race weekend. And I was able to chat to some of the drivers, which was great. It's really interesting chatting to the drivers straight, off the back of them, taking their helmets off and after their debriefs, for example. So managed to get a lot of interviews. You can check those out on our website, www.insidef2.com, for all of those exclusive interviews that we got from in the paddock. 100%, Aaron, you're right. Just being behind the scenes in Formula 2, Formula 3 paddock, walking up and down, getting a bit of the feel for what it's like behind the scenes was awesome. And I'm going to be talking about some of those experiences throughout the podcast today as well. And let me tell you something, Silverstone, the only track in the world where you can go, it was raining all weekend long and I still came away sunburned. I do not understand how that is possible. We saw about 20 minutes of sun on the Saturday. You alluded to it there. The drivers love Silverstone. And I spoke to a few of them in the paddock, and I was talking about the track, and they're all absolutely buzzing. The Maggots Beckett section, they all say, what's your favourite part of the track? Maggots Beckett's. Every time, they absolutely love it, the fast flowing nature of the circuit, and definitely a favourite circuit for me and for the drivers as well, by the sounds of it. Anyway, let's get into the podcast. We're going to be talking about Andrea Kimi Antonelli's first win in Formula 2. We're also going to be discussing the last lap incident between the Invicta boys in the sprint race. A bit spicy that was, wasn't it? And we're also going to be talking about a certain driver who's been announced in Formula 1 this weekend as well. But there's only one place to start, and that is the feature race. We had, obviously, Isaac Hadjar winning the race. It was won by Jack Crawford on the road, but Hadjar picks up the 25 points the 27 points, including the pole position points as well. It was a really good drive and a really good weekend by Isaac Hadjar, bar the little mishap in the sprint race, Omi. Hadjar yet again shows he has the pace consistently, right?
Yep, indeed. He has been performing really, really well throughout this season. And it's kind of what we expected him from his Formula 3 campaign. It's kind of what we expected him to do last year in Formula 2, but we're getting it this year as well. But phenomenal stuff from Isaac Hadjar. Took the pole on the Friday. Disappointment in the sprint race on the Saturday, but in the feature race, lost it off the line, but did recover well with a bit of a tussle with Victor Martins, was finally able to get through. But then, of course, Jack Crawford came by, but got a little bit lucky as well with Jack Crawford's penalty due to the unsafe release. But Hadjar still getting some amazing points as usual, always being up there to capitalize on moments like that. So phenomenal stuff from Isaac Hadjar, and he really is a driver that a lot of drivers are going to need to get on form if they want to beat in this season, because it seems like Isaac Hadjar is the driver who is on form. Whichever track we go to, he seems like the one to beat right now.
I completely agree. That's his third win of the season, all feature races as well, which is incredible. And every race weekend we rock up at the moment, he seems to be there or thereabouts. And Aaron, we're starting to see not only Hadjar, but a few familiar faces at the front every single weekend. Hadjar, Bortoletto, Colapinto, Jack Crawford. Are we starting to see the championship settle down a little bit? And Paul Aron as well, by the way. Sorry, I'm not going to forget Paul Aron. Obviously, disappointing weekend this weekend at Silverstone. But are we starting to see the championship settle down, and we're starting to see those familiar faces at the front every weekend who are there on genuine pace?
Certainly looks like it, because it's genuinely been the same faces at the front on Sundays. Obviously, we've had the reverse grids that puts different people at the front on Saturday with the sprint race. But you've seen the teams that have got a handle on this new F2 car quickest, essentially, and they're extracting the performance out of it. Isaac Hadjar for one, Paul Aron. And these aren't necessarily drivers that we thought would be front runners. Everyone expected ART and Prema to hit the ground running, or eventually get up to speed once you've got past Bahrain, because it's just Prema's kryptonite, that circuit. They never go well there. But yeah, we're starting to see different faces at the front, which I think is good, because we kind of assumed that Antonelli would be there, that Bearman would be there, Martins, possibly O'Sullivan in the second ART, and maybe a couple of others. But, Hadjar, Maloney, Crawford as, the top three at Silverstone, not necessarily drivers we would have, I say, expected to be up front. They've all got the talent, but it's just about putting it together with the same team. So we can say right now that it looks like there is a trend appearing. But when we go to Hungary and Belgium, expect it to be turned on its head now that we've said that. So, this is in before Prema and ART dominance across 2 weekends. That's what F2 gives you, though. You never, ever know what's coming around the next corner.
Would be classic Formula 2 to see it all flipped on its head next time out in Budapest, wouldn't it? So definitely. Omi, I was sat in the media centre for the race on Sunday, the feature race, and I was starting to see, obviously, Hadjar and Victor Martin starting to battle for the lead. You've just mentioned it there. And I was thinking, you know what, Hadjar, the more you battle with Martins, the more you're given this to Colapinto, who was obviously on the alternative strategy and looked very, very quick. And obviously we knew that he was going to be coming out on the soft tyres at the end. But he didn't. It was very well calculated. It was just overall, I think we're starting to see a bit of maturity and some good decision-making, as well as the genuine pace from Isaac Hadjar, right?
Yeah, and that is always crucial for a driver, because you could have that overall pace, but then if you aren't able to sometimes be a bit mature and also sometimes possibly be a bit more patient, then it can lead to huge errors and consequences. So we have seen Colapinto on the alternative strategy quite a few times, of course, got to second in Austria. So he's a driver that you definitely do have to keep an eye on. And there's always going to be the drivers on the alternative strategy roaring their way through, like we saw with Correa, of course, in Spain, getting that podium as well in the feature race. So you do have to be worrying. There's more contenders in Formula 2. You need to look everywhere, because many drivers could come from absolutely everywhere in Formula 2, even if you might not expect them to be in your race. So you have to be careful. But yeah, Victor Martins versus Hadjar, that was very close between the two French drivers, both of them dueling it out and not wanting to give it up at all. So they were risking definitely contact between the pair. They were losing time, but crucially, Martins, of course, going off the road, meaning that Hadjar was able to get through comfortably, of course, losing out to Crawford, but due to Crawford's penalty, it was fine in the end. But they nearly did cost themselves, but it was a crucial move that Hadjar needed to make, because if he didn't at the same time, Victor Martins would have won.
Absolutely. So Hadjar picked up the 25 points then. It was Jack Crawford who crossed the line first, but obviously received a penalty for a pit lane infringement, obviously pulling out in front of Zane Maloney in the feature race, which meant that he got a penalty and did not win the race, despite winning it on the road. Aaron, I know you've got your opinions on this. Was that fair? Was that a fair penalty for Jack Crawford?
It wasn't a fair penalty for the driver. I think these penalties are the same in Formula One. These penalties should be applied to the team, not to the driver. Obviously, they're penalising the team by giving the car, per se, a time penalty, but then drops it back down the order. They lose constructors' points for that. But the driver is so dependent on the mechanic lifting the lollipop, giving them the green light so that they can leave the pit box. In the footage, it's quite close, because I think Maloney, it was Maloney who was behind, And I think they were next to each other in the pit lane. So that situation was always going to happen. So by the time that the Rodin team have given Zane the go-ahead, he's already halfway out his pit box. And the lollipop guy for Jack Crawford probably hasn't noticed and has probably already committed to lifting the lollipop himself. So it's really, really tricky. There's no question it was an unsafe release. It's just one of those things. It's motorsport. It happens. Obviously, we want the pit lane to be as safe as possible. We've seen it go wrong there before with mechanics getting hurt and things like that. But also, I don't think the driver necessarily has any blame in this because you can't see out the side of the car. So it's tricky. You probably need to rewrite the rule book in that sense. I think the penalty itself was correctly applied for what happened. I don't think it should have been applied to Jack Crawford himself. So they should have just maybe knocked off a few points for Dams in the Constructors' Championship. That hurts them. Maybe something like that, because we've seen it in Formula One. You can navigate a 5-second penalty if you've got the speed. Much more difficult in Formula One, but we have seen these track penalties, time penalties abused in the past. So they need to be careful. They don't want to, just call fault on the driver when the driver doesn't necessarily have any fault given. But as for was the penalty fair, it was the correct penalty. I just don't think it should have been applied to Jack Crawford himself. It should have been applied to the team separately.
I agree with you, by the way. I definitely agree. And I do hear people who say that, the driver also has mirrors and can look. But I just don't think I think for me, the driver's so focused on, that is such a quick stop and the drivers are in and out of the box so quickly and they're so focused on the race and what's ahead of them. And I think that is the team's responsibility to make sure it is safe for the car to be released and for the driver to go. So I'm with you on that one. And I think that's not just a Formula 2 problem. That is a problem across motorsport that maybe we need to have a look at that rule. And work out another way of punishing the team and not the driver, because I really felt for Jack Crawford. He put together a brilliant race. He obviously took the lead from Isaac Hadjar and Victor Martins when they were battling, and I thought it was a really composed drive by him, and for me he should have been collecting or claiming the 25 points for that feature race. But wasn't meant to be. Omi, your thoughts on that? Do you think it should also be the team punished rather than the driver, or do you think that penalty was fair to Jack Crawford?
I have to agree with the pair of you with that one. The driver is always looking at the team. That's basically the indication. That's what the driver is relying on. They have a lot more to focus on, of course, thinking about when they get onto the circuit, trying to warm up those tyres. And there's a lot going through the driver's mind. So they aren't really trying to think about that specific thing on the circuit. They're hoping, of course, that they can get out of, let's say, whoever they're fighting coming into the pit lane. But they're just going to go as soon as the team lets them. And they're basically just fully relying on the team. Yeah, so as soon as the lollipop man is able to remove the part and get the car back out onto the circuit, the driver's just going to go. They, of course, aren't going to be waiting. It always gets close in a Formula 2 pit lane, so you're always just trying to go as soon as possible. So for the driver, I don't think it should be a penalty. I think it should be more towards the team. I would be fine personally with maybe the team losing a few points in the Constructors' Championship. So, I really felt for Jack Crawford. The Dams lately has had some amazing race pace, I think we have to say as well. The Dams has had some amazing race pace with the tyres, and we've seen them fighting their way at the front of the field in the sprints and the feature races. So they're definitely a team to keep an eye on throughout the next few races. But yeah, very disappointing for Jack Crawford at Silverstone to lose that victory.
I'm just checking because I think that I'm right by saying that Dams have scored the most points. 4 points short. Invicta have scored the most points over the triple header. Dams second most amount of points on 68 points, ahead of Campos, ahead of MP Motorsport, ahead of High Tech, who are obviously in and around there in the in the team standings. So yeah, I agree. Dam's really strong results over the triple header, and definitely a team to keep an eye on. And Jack Crawford, a driver to keep an eye on, because he seems to be hitting some good form. And Vive on our Discord, one of our favourite listeners in Vive, gets involved in our Discord all the time, said really happy for Victor Martins, even if he did make a mistake, his pace seems back. Now I hope this wasn't a one-off. Aaron, I think Victor Martins, that was he was obviously P2 in qualifying. That's on genuine pace, and he did lead the feature race for a bit. It was a good weekend for Victor Martins, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was. It looked like he was back to his old self, and he obviously went really well at Silverstone last year, pole position, feature race winner. So he said ahead of the weekend that he wanted to draw on some of that and go better. They seem to be getting their act together, ART and Prema, because they both had positive weekends in that sense with the speed of the car and results as well. So it looks like they're getting their head around things. And it's obviously good for Victor Martins because he's had such a tricky season. It's not been quite the same as Ollie Bearman, who we were expecting him to fight for the championship. Bearman has obviously had that run out in the Ferrari, so he is on a high. And that can I think, I've said it before, I think that's kind of wrong-footed him. Prema not quite hitting the level that they're used to has not helped him either. But for Victor, he's just been stuck in this sort of whirlpool of disaster with ART. It just won't seem to go right for him. He got the sprint race win in Spain and then got taken out at the first corner on the next day. This time, he actually put the weekend together much more solidly. Good qualifying. Okay, not the podium result he had been hoping for, but it's a step in the right direction in terms of feature race pace, which is where the big points are handed out. So I'd expect a little bit more from Victor Martins coming forward, and ART as well moving forward into the next couple of races before the summer break.
We had an Alpine driver win last time in Budapest, win the feature race last time in Budapest. So could we have the same this year as well? FIA F2 Goated say great weekend for Zane Maloney as he tries to get back in the title race. And I completely agree with that one. I spoke to him pre-sprint race and he said he was looking to get his season back on track. I think it's fair to say he did that, Omi. It was P2 in the sprint race, P2 in the feature race. You can't hope for much more than that, can you?
Yeah, very consistent, just like the start of the season. And unfortunately, it's not been as great as Bahrain. It's going to be hard to be as great as Bahrain here in Formula 2. But for Zane Maloney, after the first few rounds, it's been very disappointing for him. He's not been able to get those podiums, not being able to constantly fight for those higher positions. He wanted to fight for the title this year, and it has taken a bit of a knock so far, but it can easily be recovered. I've seen a few more mistakes made by Paul Aaron lately as well, so maybe he's starting to crack a bit under the pressure with this title fight as well. So we could be seeing a few mistakes coming from a few drivers, so he may get the opportunity to try fight back, but he needs to continue now the form from Silverstone, go into Hungary and Spa and score some more podiums and possibly even get a win as well, and he could really be back in it. That's how quickly it changes in Formula 2. But yeah, he'll need to continue this form, but a great weekend here at Silverstone, very consistent, and that's exactly what we should really be expecting from a driver like Zane Maloney.
You mentioned, obviously, Paul Aaron there. Obviously, he had a collision with Josh Dirksen, which pretty much ruined both of their races. What were your thoughts on that incident? And do you think Paul Aaron is feeling the pressure a little bit, do you think?
I think, he is feeling the pressure a little bit. Of course, that mistake in the Spain feature race possibly costing him a chance of fighting for that win with Jack Crawford in Spain. And then, of course, a mistake in Austria in that qualifying session when one of his nearest title rivals, of course, had an engine blowout early on in the session, Isaac Hadjar. So that gave him an opportunity. So it gave Paul Aaron a bit of an opportunity, but he wasn't able to capitalize due to that mistake. We are seeing a few little mistakes from Paul Aaron, but I think he's just got to try and first of all go after that win. Hitech, the only team who haven't taken a win this season in Formula 2, so that's exactly what they will be trying to do. But a few little mistakes from Paul Aaron, cracking a bit under the pressure, with especially seeing how fast Hadjar has been in the last few races, so I think that possibly could be getting to him slightly. Disappointing weekend for Paul Aaron at Silverstone, but he will definitely be looking to bounce back this weekend in Budapest.
Definitely. Okay, let's talk about the sprint race. And oh my goodness, Andrea Kimi Antonelli, quite sensational performance from him in the wet. He's finally won a race in Formula 2, albeit a sprint race. He pulled an 8-second advantage in 10 laps at the end. He was already 3.3 seconds out in front of when the red flag was called for obviously the rain and the chaos that was happening in the sprint race. But Aaron, quite sensational performance. And for me, when it's wet, we all know that, the best drivers always come to the forefront when it's wet. And for him to pull a gap that big it was brilliant, right?
Wow, it was a fantastic performance, wasn't it? It was everything we'd expected to see from Kimi Antonelli at points this season. It's obviously much more difficult to come in and blow away a Formula 2 field versus a FIA field. No disrespect. The level is clearly going to be higher. That's the way it's supposed to work. But it's kind of poetic, isn't it? There's an opportunity at the Mercedes Formula 1 team, and on the weekend that the bloke who's leaving Formula 1, the bloke that's leaving the Mercedes team wins the British Grand Prix, Antonelli puts in a performance like that. And look, I kind of expect Antonelli to be in that second Merc seat next year. His performance kind of reminded me of Lewis's win in 2008, where he was just obliterating everybody in the rain, just so much more confidence in that situation. Obviously, it's easy when you're out in front, but like you say, he wasn't just maintaining a lead. He was extending that lead, building that lead, restarts, had to get them right. And he mixed up his game in terms of how and where he dropped the hammer to get the racing going again, and just kept disappearing. It was quite phenomenal to watch, to be honest, and very, very impressive for a young man. He's not even 18 yet. Not even 18 yet. Makes me feel very old. So, the talent this boy has. Look, Mercedes seem to be getting their act together as well with the Formula 1 machine. So, if he is in that car, he could possibly sneak a win next year. But that's getting ahead of ourselves. Let's just sort of savour in the fact that he's taken a Formula 2 sprint race. Obviously, he would like to win a feature race. But the way he did it, I think, stands out more than just simply winning. It was the command he had over the field, the style with which he pulled it off. It was just magnificent.
I mean, agree. Pretty good performance, right? And obviously 2 wins in 2 weekends for Prema as well, albeit sprint race wins. Are they back in business, or are we not saying that until they win a feature race?
Well, it seems like they are definitely doing better than what they were doing at the start of the season. So it'll be interesting to see, but I think we can make that judgment after Hungary and Spa, looking at how their performances go there. But yes, absolutely brilliant from Kimi Antonelli. As Aaron mentioned, had to deal with plenty of restarts and first into the conditions as well. So brilliant stuff from Andrea Kimi Antonelli. Really reminded me of that, of his wet weather skill as well from Freca at Zandvoort, where we went from 8th on the grid to first in 2 laps at Zandvoort in the wet conditions. That was absolutely brilliant. So it kind of reminded me of that. And he is one beast in the wet conditions. He said earlier in the season that he really was waiting for the wet conditions, and he got the wet conditions and he delivered absolutely brilliantly. So he's a very rapid driver. But yeah, it was also unfortunate to see, of course, him being taken out in the feature race by Maney, and it meant that we didn't get to see whether that would be a huge changing moment for Kimi Antonelli, because sometimes when it clicks for him, he really is on it. So it's unfortunate we weren't able to see that in the feature race, but hopefully he will put the feature race behind him, and we'll hopefully be able to see a continuation of the Silverstone sprint race in Hungary, and hopefully he will be able to fight near the front once again.
Definitely, I'm excited to see what he can do, whether he can kick on from this now in Budapest, Spa, and for the rest of the season. That is assuming he's not in a certain blue Formula 1 car after the summer break. Let's see on that one. Obviously, the conditions were awful in the sprint race, though. It was really hammering it down. We saw a red flag, obviously. Were you surprised that the red flag wasn't called earlier, Aaron? A few of the drivers saying to me in the paddock after the race, they were a little bit surprised that it wasn't called earlier, with the exception of Taylor Barnard, who was absolutely buzzing and thought the flag was called at the right time. What were your thoughts on it, Aaron?
I thought they got it just about right. They called the safety car, and then they called the red flag. I think they got enough out of it, as much as they could get. obviously it's a very fine line. We know just how badly wrong it can go. You think back to Suzuka 2014, obviously the loss of Jules Bianchi on that horrible, horrible day. But the drivers obviously have to drive accordingly to the conditions. Obviously, the spray, it makes it so hard. Obviously, it's very easy to say that, but as a driver, obviously, you're going to do everything you can not to crash the car. But I think Race Control did a really good job. They kept everybody safe. They allowed them the opportunity to race, which I think is important, because you can then really get a handle on actually what's going on. If they let them go and then they'd seen, oh, actually they're just sliding off the circuit, yeah, throw the safety car, maybe a red flag, just wait for the rain to pass, because it does at Silverstone, and then off we go. And that's exactly what happened. So they sat in the pit lane for a few minutes, everyone caught their breath, and off they went again. So well done to Race Control. I think we don't often say that. We criticise Race Control for not letting the cars race and for slapping unfair penalties on drivers that they don't deserve, because it's probably the team's fault. But actually on this point, I think we should stand up and say well done to Race Control for getting it pretty much spot on. I don't think they stopped it too early, but they definitely didn't stop too late, which is always important.
Definitely, and it left us with some good racing at the end of the sprint race, particularly between the two Invicta boys, Gabriel Bortoleto and Kush Miney. Omi, your thoughts on that? Because it got a little bit heated between the Invicta boys, didn't it?
It did get it did get really, really heated between those two, especially at the start of the triple header in the feature race when they made contact as well. So it was already pretty heated between them, but then battling for that final spot on the podium was getting really aggressive earlier in the race. Bortoleto wasn't happy as well, with Maney nearly taking out his front wing. So yeah, tension definitely down there at Invicta. Some great battling though, in the wet conditions, phenomenal stuff. But yeah, they were very close to making contact at quite a few times in that race. But luckily they just about survived and kept it on the road as well. But yeah, some fantastic racing on that last lap and throughout the race by them for us.
Definitely. Okay, moving on then. I want to move on to our feature Rookie Watch, where we're looking at all of the rookies this year. Aaron, was there a standout rookie for you across the weekend? Potentially Franco Colapinto, P4 in the feature race, P5 in the sprint race. It's a good effort from him, wasn't it?
Yeah, I was just looking at the results, and Colapinto's the one sort of rookie that you look at and you go, yeah, he's had a pretty consistent weekend, because you can't say much more than a P4 and a P5 other than that's very, very consistent. If you put that in every single race across the season, you're going to give yourself a very good chance of winning the championship. Obviously, he's still got a little bit of work to do in terms of building that consistency, but it is really coming together nicely for him. He's showing the sorts of performances that I think Williams are looking at. He did have a run out in FP1 in the Williams F1 car at Silverstone. He's a very, very, very outside shot for that second Williams seat next season. I think a lot of things have to happen for him to end up in that seat. Unfortunately, it's not a criticism of his talent. It's just the situation we're in at the moment. We've got way too many good drivers and just simply nowhere near enough seats. It's like an oversubscribed movie that everyone wants to see, but the cinema just is not big enough. And they need to build another cinema. So, hello, Formula One teams. Welcome some new friends to the party, please. We'd all really appreciate it. Let's all be, including everyone who wants to play. But Colapinto, very good performance, looking assured. Could have potentially won the race on that alternate strategy, but I think he just cooked the soft tyres at the end. And they weren't lasting particularly long in the early stages either. So it was always a bit of a gamble. He could have been allowed a little bit closer by the squabbling from those Hadjar, Maloney, Crawford and Martins, but it wasn't to be. It's kind of a Hail Mary sometimes, that alternate strategy. Sometimes it works for you, sometimes it doesn't. This was one where it didn't work out so well, but still solid points brought home.
Definitely. Omi, anyone that stood out for you in terms of rookies this weekend?
Have to agree, first of all, on Franco Colapinto. Great weekend from him. He's a driver who's been brilliant in qualifying as well, setting himself up for the feature races. So brilliant stuff from Colapinto there. Bortoleto, another good weekend from him as well. So I think he's definitely a driver who just continues to perform and get those points in, does Bortoleto. Of course, Maloney was able, though, to, with his 2 second places, get ahead in the Drivers' Championship. But Bortoleto surely will be trying to come back when we do go to Hungary and Spa as well in the next 2 weeks. But yeah, great stuff from Colapinto, Bortoleto as well. So good shout out to him. And then, of course, we have to mention Kimi Antonelli for that brilliant drive in the sprint. But unfortunate that we weren't able to see how he would have done in the feature.
Definitely, completely agree. I think Bortoleto is obviously a good shout as well, and potentially would have had another podium if he didn't get the 5 second penalty that put him behind Kush Miney. By the way, some exclusive comments to us from Gabriel Bortoleto when I spoke to him in the paddock. You can go and check that out on our website www.insidef2.com. for those comments and that exclusive interview. I can't leave without talking about Ollie Bearman and his announcement that he's going to be a Formula One driver for the Haas F1 team in 2025. Aaron, I know you're a big fan of Ollie Bearman, and I expect you're absolutely buzzing with the news, right?
My bank account is going to take a severe beating at the start of next season because I've got 4 British drivers. Well, 5 if you count Alex Albon, and actually I do. 5 British drivers to buy merch for. So goodbye bank account, goodbye social life. It's not quite that bad. But Ollie Bearman on the F1 grid is really exciting news because we saw in that snapshot at Saudi Arabia just what he could do, and obviously he's impressed Haas lots in his FP1 outings. He did really well for them at the back end of 2023. And, I mean, they have a checkered history with rookies in their car. Mick Schumacher and Nikita Mazepin didn't necessarily cover themselves in glory whilst behind the wheel of their cars. Esteban Gutierrez, I think there was someone else that they had as a rookie as well somewhere that I might be missing out. But of course, they've also had some problems with the experienced drivers in Romain Grosjean and Kevin Magnussen. But I think Ollie Bearman is a very exciting driver that the team are going to be able to gather themselves around, and his speed will lead them forward. Who partners alongside him is going to be very interesting. It's rumoured to be Esteban Ocon, who is known to be confrontational with teammates. Classic Haas. But, Ollie deserves this moment. He's worked so hard. It's literally his life's work. And he's now going to become a professional racing driver. And he absolutely deserves it. People will be questioning why he's getting the nod over some other drivers who are higher up in the F2 standings. Ferrari know how good this guy is. Haas have seen it as well. There are some drivers where you just look at them and you just go, they've got it. They have got it. It's not a question of actually they need to put results together. You can see that they've got it. It's just something that they do, something that tells you this guy is special. You saw it with Verstappen, you saw it with Hamilton. It's just one of those situations where obviously they're big comparisons to make, but you can see that someone has just got that speed, and speed in Formula One takes you an awful long way. If you can muscle a car around a circuit, Fernando Alonso style, you'll do rather well. But all credit to him. Very happy for him. And I can't wait for Australia next year where he gets to make his debut. His full debut.
His full debut, exactly. The full debut with the Haas F1 team. Omi, Aaron's alluded to it there a little bit that, obviously his Formula 2 season isn't going as well as perhaps he would have anticipated. Is this signing by Haas maybe more representative of his FP1 outings for them and that drive that we obviously saw in Jeddah earlier on in the year in the Formula 1 car, rather than his F2 performances this season? Obviously, we know he had a good season last season in his rookie season of Formula 2, but perhaps more so than his representative of his campaign this season in Formula 2.
Yeah, indeed. If he had a good performance in Formula 1, of course, they're going to use that more than they would to a Formula 2 season that isn't going his way, when we know how talented Ollie Bearman he is. He's shown it all throughout his junior career as well, in Formula 3, in Formula 2, in Italian F4, all sorts of series. He's shown how talented Ollie Bearman can be. Of course, picking up the double at Baku, that was one of the highlights of last season as well for him. So he's a really, really talented driver. I think everyone knows that. And this season for him hasn't gone his way, unfortunately. But there was many drivers who we expected to fight to the front, and it hasn't gone their way either as well. Prema has been struggling, and then Ollie Bearman has been in and out, of course, at Saudi, where he secured that pole position. So that could have been a good weekend for him in Formula 2. Didn't get that opportunity, though, which I don't think he would have minded one bit, as he got a Ferrari drive in Formula 1. But yeah, with the F1 data, that is always going to be very, very crucial for them, and sometimes even more than his Formula 2 campaign from 2024 as well.
Absolutely, a massive well done and congratulations to Ollie Bearman. Very well deserved, and we look forward to seeing him in Formula 1 in 2025. Let's take a look at the championship standings before we go then. Isaac Hadjar is our new championship leader after recording his third feature race victory in Sunday's feature race. He leads Paul Aron by 16 points now. Good weekend for Zane Maloney. He moves back into third in the standings ahead of Gabriele Bortoleto. Sprint race winner Kimi Antonelli is up to 8th on 59 points. Chris Miney and Enzo Fittipaldi round out the top 10. And the team standings. Campos extend their lead to 13 points in the team standings after their third victory of the season as well, which is the most by any team in Formula 2 this season. MP Motorsport and Invicta Racing move above High Tech into second and third after a difficult home race for the Silverstone-based team. Proman ART remains 7th and 8th after better weekends for both of those teams, but still down to 7th and 8th in the standings. VAR, AIX and Trident round out the team standings. Okay, that's all we got time for today, but we want to hear your thoughts in the comments. Is Isaac Hadjar the new title favourite? Was Gabriele Bortoleto perhaps a little bit too aggressive with his teammate Chris Miney? And is Kimi Antonelli going to push on from here? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. We want to hear your thoughts and your opinions, and we want to have that discussion with you guys in the comments. But from me, Fraser Ford, and all of us here at Inside F2, we'll see you next time.